Okay. All right, we're going to start. 1, 2, 3. Welcome. It's 1:30. It's time for the glass session. If you're here for glass recycling, I'm Michael Timpane with RRS, and many people probably know we work with all parts of the glass recycling chain in recycling, and with a lot of different entities in that chain. And so it's natural. I'm glad to be here as the moderator. It's a more difficult to recycle material the way that recycling is collected because of the compaction of glass against other products. And it makes it difficult to get a clean recycling product out of it. However, it's still getting recycled at a rate that's pretty impressive in the recycling system in North America. And over 85% of programs in the United States want to collect glass. And people want to collect glass. And so municipalities and haulers that are part of that value chain want to please their customers. And so provided that there's enough money to do those things, they generally go ahead and provide that collection for the public. So this session is called Partnership Glass Recycling Opportunities in the Southeast. It's meant to be interactive. We'll have 3 panelists. If you are remote and you want to be part of the discussion, you can use the chat or raise your hand. And when the 3 presentations are over, we'll go ahead and we'll have a discussion. And I think that's all. So we're going to start with our first presentation. This is a first for me. There are a couple of these that are recorded. We have a couple of people on the phone. And we'll start with one of the recorded ones. This is from Scott DeFife, president of the Glass Packaging Institute. And that represents people who make glass containers for products. And we'll start with his video first. Take it away.
Hi, my name is Scott DeFife. I'm the president of the Glass Packaging Institute, and I'm so sorry I can't be with you in person at the Southeast Recycling Conference, but I'll try to make it the next time. We've all had Hi, my name is Scott DeFife. I'm the president of the Glass Packaging Institute, and I'm so sorry I can't be with you in person at the Southeast Recycling Conference, but I'll try to make it the next time. We've all had a little bit of fits and starts the past year getting back to in-person conferences, but Hi, my name is Scott DeFife. I'm the president.
Hey, Gene, while we fix that, do we want to skip to Laura if we can get her on?
Hi, my name is Scott DeFife. I'm the president of the Glass Packaging Institute. Hi, my name is Scott DeFife. I'm the president of the Glass Packaging Institute, and I'm so sorry I can't be with you in person at the Southeast Recycling Conference. Hi, my name is Scott DeFife.
Here we go.
Hi, my name is Scott DeFife. President of the Glass Packaging Institute. And I'm so sorry I can't be with you in Hi, my name is Scott DeFife. I'm the president of the Glass Packaging Institute, and I'm so sorry I can't be with you in person at the Southeast Recycling Conference, but I'll try to make it the next time. We've all had a little bit of fits and starts the past year, getting back to in-person conferences, but I'm looking forward to being with you in the future, and I will be available to answer questions at the end of this presentation. The Glass Packaging Institute is the trade association for North American glass container manufacturers and our supply chain partners. During COVID, we took the time to do some studies of our supply chain so that we could address some of the challenges that we're having getting increasing amounts of glass, recycled glass cullet back to container plants. In addition, with all of the pressure that is coming from brands and consumers for more sustainability and higher recycled content, we have been studying ways to increase the average recycled content of our glass bottles and jars made in North America. And we want to meet the EPA challenge of getting all materials to a recycling rate of 50% by 2030. So in April, we released a circular future for glass, which is the culmination of a 6-month study with the Boston Consulting Group on the glass supply chains in North America and how we can get that more material back into the supply chain and from there to glass container manufacturers. The average recycling rate for glass over the course of the past decade has been in the low 30s. Coincidentally, the average recycled content rate for the average bottle or jar made in North America over the course of the past decade has also been in the low 30s. We want to get both of those numbers to 50%. I think we're going to need the recycling rate over 50%, as you can see here, at the end of the decade in order to achieve our recycled content goal of 50% on average. It's an aggressive target, but one that we think that we can meet with the following objectives. Let me remind everybody, however, why it's important for glass recycling. It's especially important for the glass container manufacturers. Not only does it preserve natural resources, and of course, every piece of glass that's recycled eliminates glass from landfills, but glass is infinitely recyclable. Once you've turned the raw materials into glass once, you can turn them into a glass container over and over again with no degradation in quality. It is also critical, and the reason that recycled cullet is used in making new bottles and jars is that it requires less energy to remelt the glass into its molten form to put back into a glass container than it is to take the energy to convert the raw materials into glass in the first place. So once you've gone to the effort of making glass the first time, we should reuse that as many times as possible to make new bottles and jars. Not only is glass reusable, refillable, all of the other things, the qualities that come with it as a sustainable packaging product, but from a recyclability standpoint, using recycled glass to make new glass helps reduce energy and manufacturing cost, lowers carbon emissions, and extends the life of the furnace. Getting to our 50% recycling rate by the end of the decade will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 1.4 metric tons annually, the equivalent of taking 300,000 cars off the road each year. But in order to get to an end result, you have to figure out where you're starting. Where are we starting our journey? And in the United States right now, on average at the low 30s in recycling rate, that is widely variable across the different states. And in the Southeast, in particular, we have lower glass recycling rates than other parts of the country. There are no bottle bill states in the Southeast, and the redemption bottle bill states are good sources of quality material at high volume. The 10 bottle bill states produce somewhere slightly more than half of the cullet that ends up back in container plants right now, by our estimate. The glass recycling rates in the 10 bottle bill states is 63% compared to the glass recycling rate in non-bottle bill states at 24%. Oregon leads the way because of the efficiency of its redemption program in the co-op with OBRC. And in addition, the non-deposit glass that is left over in Oregon for a wide variety of large parts of the state is collected in a separate curbside stream, glass on the side stream, rather than in the commingled single stream bin. So you combine the efficient bottle bill and glass on the side in large portions of Oregon, and you get a very high glass recycling rate in one that rivals the higher rates that we see in Europe and other nations with more robust recycling systems. Again, this study that we just finished is not just to set a goal and to have a number out there, but it is to get that material back to plants. We have a lot of plants in states that are in single digits or teens in terms of glass recycling rates. And many of the reasons for that are a lack of incentives for consumers, very low landfill tip fees for MRFs in many regions, especially in the Southeast. We see lower landfill tip fees, really no regulatory efforts compelling glass recycling in the region. There is a lack of processing capacity in some markets, and there is too great a distance to get the material where there is processing, to get that material to the processing. And I'm going to talk about quality in this regard. Last year, we sponsored with NEMA of which Owens Corning is a member, a survey from SERC of MRFs in the Southeast for glass recycling equipment. We were very appreciative of those MRFs that responded to the private survey. We do not have any of the data on a case-by-case standpoint. SERC has all of that. But the summary findings showed us that our estimate is that less than half of the MRFs in the Southeast have even the basic glass equipment for recycling, glass breakers and trommels to do the basic separation of glass. And in fact, there are many large and mid-sized MRFs in the Southeast that send the glass directly to landfill. That is a key leverage point for us. We need to keep that glass out of the landfill in order to have an opportunity to get it back into the supply chain. So in studying these problems and challenges to the glass supply chain, we've come up with a basket of solutions and programs to affect change. And we can combine these into three basic categories. First, as I started off by saying, keeping the glass out of the landfill, let's talk about leave no bottle behind. We want all of that glass. If we can possibly get it, then we can get it from consumers and from communities. We can get it back into the supply chain. So we need to look at studying ways of getting the material back to us in the first place. Once we have that material, we need to improve the processes and transform the recycling system, improve access to processing, be more efficient, clean up streams, and lower residual contamination. Lastly, there's in studying how we could get to our goal reasonably and realistically, it's just not possible to affect bottle bills in many of the states where there's high volumes of material and a low population. It's a politically challenging task. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't support such a thing if the public were to get behind it, but we needed to come up with some solutions that were doable without the challenges of high leverage political advocacy and reliance on legislative bodies. That can take years in development. It doesn't mean that we aren't going to try. There are some opportunities on the West Coast and in the Northeast where the state legislatures are considering extended producer responsibility. We are leaning into those state discussions to see if we can improve the glass recycling in those areas. But for other parts of the country, we need to take steps to recover the glass without reliance on extended producer responsibility, bottle bills, or high leverage legislative chances. We need the glass soon, and we need to get started on collecting every incremental ton that we can going forward for the supply chain. Here's a map of where we are right now. The glass manufacturing plants are in the light blue. For the purposes of this and studying glass supply chains and end markets, we put the fiberglass plants up on our map as well. You'll see some red stars. I'm going to talk about the Glass Recycling Coalition Certified MRF program in a few minutes. But in addition, all of the other smaller square dots are non-certified MRFs that do accept glass. You can see virtually all of the lower 48 that is from the Mississippi River Delta and really the Central Plains over to the East Coast has glass end markets, glass processing, glass container manufacturing scattered throughout. It's all reachable. There are end markets for glass in the eastern parts of the United States. In the West, I would say it's very viable on the West Coast. Arizona, California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado all have glass. Well, there's no glass manufacturing plants in Arizona, but there is glass processing in Arizona, and the glass from Arizona does feed the California markets and also some border plants with Mexico. but there are container manufacturers and fiberglass plants in Colorado and Utah, as well as along the West Coast. So regionally, we look at that as one area, and then Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas as a region, the Southeast as a region, the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast, and the Great Lakes areas. And we studied these different regions for different solutions, because the problems in one area may not be the same as the problems in another area, where there may be a large volume of good, clean glass in the Northeast from a variety of bottle bill programs. The problem in the Northeast is getting that recycled glass to end markets in Pennsylvania, New York, and elsewhere in the country. In the Southeast, we may have less processing than we need, and there's longer distances to get that glass material to markets. So different solutions for different regions. And really what we're working on this year and next is developing some core fundamental tenets of our program over the course of the next decade, working together on innovative financing so that we can get more glass cleaning equipment into single-stream MRFs. Where we cannot improve single-stream MRFs, we're going to work on cleaner residential streams, dual stream, glass on the side, modified single stream, drop-off opportunities if we cannot get glass back into curbside. In addition, commercial recycling, bar and restaurant recycling. On-premise accounts took a hit during COVID, but they're coming back. And they are good, strong, reliable streams of clean glass if we can keep that glass separated from the start and keep it out and divert it away from landfill. That is a good supply of glass that we are currently not getting. It's incremental tons for the industry supply chain. In addition, we need to work on expanding reach and access to processing, hub and spoke programs, some hybrid pre-cleaning operations, and working in collaboration partnerships in certain jurisdictions that are just outside the reach of processing right now to get that material from the consumers to where the glass processing is. And that may include some statewide strategies, economic development strategies, market access strategies, cooperative partnership strategies that we'll be exploring across the country. In addition, we found that there were a lot of public officials that really just needed to understand glass recycling better. So we put these brochures together, some very simple glass recycling basics 101 kind of programming. It's available on our website, www.gpi.org, under the glass recycling section. Also, some basic questions for municipal leaders to ask about glass recycling before taking any major steps to remove the material from the curbside stream. There are lots of things that can be done to affect change and to improve the situation in certain cities, counties, and the industry is here to work with cities and counties, local officials, to get glass recycling going in places where people have struggled. So please approach us, reach out to anybody in the glass industry, or shoot us an email, shoot me an email at GPI, and we will work our best to find a solution to your issues. Now let's go back to quality. Quality impedes the marketability and the market value of the material. I put up a picture of drop-off glass to show the clean. That's 98% glass. There's maybe some caps, some corks. Every once in a while you have some contamination in there, but largely that's glass. I can look at it, see it's glass. You can look at it, see it's glass. Public officials can see that that's glass. That's good quality glass that will end up as cullet and can end up back in container plants or fiberglass plants. On the other picture here is MRF glass. And what really gets lost in the conversation at a surface level is there may be discussions about, well, there's no markets for glass. Well, there's really, there's plenty of markets for the clean glass. It is the residual contamination that drags the market value down and depresses the value that MRF can get for its material and getting that material to a processing facility. That's about 50% glass that I'm told, based on the audit that was being conducted when this picture was taken. I'm hard pressed to see a bottle in there. I do know that from some basic cleaning operations, that pile of what is deemed MRF glass can turn into 80, 90% volume by weight glass on its way to processing. And so it can be done, and we'd like more of it to be done. And so we want to work with the industry to partner to get some cleanup equipment at MRFs. And one of the key reasons for this is a material flow chart of non-deposit states. I've already talked about the high volume of quality material that's available from our 10 bottle bill states. In the 40 other states and jurisdictions that do not have redemption in bottle bills, the material flow study shows us that 2/3 of that material is ending up in the landfill. 40 to 45% of it is going straight to the landfill. We never even have a chance to get our hands on it, but from that material that does go curbside, MRF, drop-off or drop-off program, a smaller and smaller percentage of that ends up back at glass end markets like fiberglass and glass containers, less than 20% across all of the states that are non-bottle bill states. Now that number can vary. Some states do single stream better than others. And as you saw on my previous map, some states are in the teens, some are in the 20s, but some are in single digits. So a rate of getting 18 to 20% of the material from curbside to container plants or fiberglass, non-durable replacement materials or landfill cover is a fairly accurate estimation of the amount of material that we're currently getting out of the single stream systems. So the Glass Recycling Coalition, I mentioned this earlier, those red stars that were on that map a few slides ago are the MRFs across the country that have applied for and passed the GRC certification. The GRC certification is based off the ISRI technical standards, and working with a team of engineers and people in the industry who have a tremendous amount of experience with this. The GRC certification will, after some basic questions and a survey that needs to be filled out and some pictures of the material, or even sending us a batch of the material so that we can have it tested, can pass certification. This is free of charge, and the GRC is looking to certify as many MRFs as possible over the course of the next year or two. At our website, the GRC website, glassrecycles.org, all of this material and the program is fully laid out. The steps that need to be taken, the recommendations for single stream material best practices, MRF best practices in order to get a good clean stream. But we know from the CERTIC survey and a similar survey in the Northeast that less than half of the MRFs even have all of the proper glass equipment to even attempt solid glass recycling. If there's not a glass breaker and a trommel, it's hard. You're hard pressed to get good quality out of that system. And since the glass is the negative sort, it's not the positive sort like aluminum bale or plastic PET bale. It's the negative sort that comes just before residual landfill material. You really have to properly compare the market values of the glass pile, especially in a single stream system without all the right equipment. The comp is the landfill material, not the positive bale sorts for international markets. I also mentioned the glass recycling. Well, I may not have mentioned the Glass Recycling Foundation yet, but in addition to being the president of the Glass Packaging Institute, I also, and working with the Glass Recycling Coalition, I was also made the president of the Glass Recycling Foundation. The GRF is a spinoff of working with the GRC to fund glass recycling projects across the country in communities that need assistance. We've been raising money the past couple of years. It's a great opportunity to reinvest in communities and get glass recycling going in places that is currently not going. And we've invested in a couple of projects already in 2021. This project in Erie County is the first to be completed, just wrapping up 6 months of operations in Erie County, where they put out 12 to 15 new glass drop-off bins. That 110,000 pounds of glass in 5 months is now, I can officially report, I got an update yesterday, 2 days ago, that in 6 months we've got 136 tons of glass from this program, and that in the last couple of months, when they were fully operational, had all of the bins in the right locations in the summertime, they were collecting 32 tons of glass a month at those locations and diverting that from the landfill. This project's going to keep going for 6 months. I mentioned another project. I'm running out of time, but we just did start. You may have heard of our commercial bar and restaurant glass pilot in Chicago. Constellation Brands and Corona is working with us, and we partnered with Lakeshore Recycling System, and we are picking up glass from commercial bar and restaurant commercial accounts, bars and restaurants in Chicago as we speak. As I record this, glass is being picked up in the Chicagoland area, and we are going to be expanding a program similar to this in Phoenix in September, and we hope to bring more commercial bar and restaurant collection programs to communities across the country. And if anyone in the Southeast is interested in partnering with us, please give us a ring. My email here, sdefife@gpi, and we'd be happy to partner with you and collect some more glass in your community. Thank you so much.
Test? Okay, so that was Scott DeFife, and I want to thank him for that. We got started late. I'm going to go right into this. I hope we get through all three and have a chance to talk a little bit. The second speaker is Laura Hennemann. She's Vice President of Marketing and Communications for Strategic Materials. Again, this is a recording, but Laura's also on the phone, and I think both of them will be here at the end of this presentation to answer questions. One thing, when I first moved here, there were 5 glass processing plants in the state, and SMI has stuck it out. They have a big operation in Sarasota, which Laura will talk about, and they are one of the primary sources of secondary glass processing for MRFs. And without further ado, Laura, take over. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Hennemann. I am the Vice President of Marketing Communications for Strategic Materials, or as some of you might know the company is SMI. Today I'm excited to talk about glass recycling, specifically in the Southeast, but also kind of give you an overview of how glass recycling works. So kind of go through the agenda, tell you a little bit about the company if you're not familiar with us, our process, where our glass goes, glass specific to the Southeast, maybe talk about some myths that we hear every day, not just in the Southeast, but nationally, and then briefly touch on creative collections, which some of you might know as like a drop-off program rather than curbside collection. So a little bit about SMI. This is our purpose. We recycle glass to unite the interests of our people, our partners, and our planet. So we try to bring those 3 elements together in recycling glass. This is our 125th year anniversary of recycling glass. So we've been in business since 1896. We are the largest glass recycler in North America. We operate in 3 countries, US, Canada, and Mexico. And across that footprint, we have nearly 50 locations. And on average, we process about 3 million tons of glass every year. So why is glass used? Why are we in business? Recycled glass displaces virgin material like sand, and it melts at a lower temperature than some of those virgin materials. So it not only displaces something that's mined, but also provides some energy savings, which is also in turn a reduction in CO2 emissions. It primarily goes back into glass container manufacturing. So a glass bottle is usually made into a new glass bottle. 1 for 1, it's virtually no loss and can be recycled forever. Or it'll go back into fiberglass insulation. So typically everybody knows the pink insulation between your walls. Those cavities are filled with fiberglass insulation, and they can use about 70% recycled glass in the manufacturing process. So we talk a lot about, too, the uniqueness of glass as a material in the stream that it really is a great partner to a circular economy, which obviously is a buzzword. But it truly is a really great story for this material. The bottle that you place in your recycling bin today can be remade and back on your shelf as a new bottle in less than 30 days. And just showing you a little bit how it moves through a typical process. So you as a consumer, you buy a glass packaged product off your shelf, you enjoy the contents, hopefully put it in your recycling bin or take it to a drop off. If it is going curbside in your recycling bin, it'll be picked up by a hauler and go to a material recovery facility or a MRF. From there, they'll process everything they can. The glass pile comes to us, SMI, and sometimes we're the secondary processor, sometimes we're known as the recycler, but we will crush it, screen it, dry it, etc., color sort when it makes sense, and send it back into either glass container manufacturing, or as I mentioned, fiberglass insulation. If it's going back into container, it's going to be filled elsewhere, typically by a brand, and then back on the shelf. So it truly does provide a circular economy, and this process can go on forever because glass never degrades and never wears out. It can be recycled forever. So specific to glass in the southeastern US, the key takeaway, if you take nothing else from this presentation, is the demand for recycled glass in the Southeast is beyond the supply that we can recover. And that's for a variety of factors, but Georgia specifically, we bring glass in from other states because we can't get enough glass out of Georgia residents in order to try to meet that demand, and we still can't meet that demand. So for us, a big focus is trying to get more glass out of the streams that exist in Georgia or potentially creating new streams. But you can see here on the map, pretty visual, please forgive the pin placement because it's not perfect, but we operate 2 facilities near Atlanta, and then we also operate in Sarasota, Florida. And you can see some of the end markets here are primarily fiberglass insulation and container glass. So it's kind of a perfect scenario for glass recycling that doesn't exist nationally. Other regions have a lot of struggles with end markets. That is not the case in the Southeast. So we need more glass, and we are willing to try to work with any of you to try to come up with some creative solutions to get more glass. It obviously supports the local economy, but also obviously supports the environment as well. So there's a lot of benefits to recycling glass. And if glass is going to the landfill specific in the Southeast, then that's not something that we would support, nor do we think is warranted. A little bit about what we do for glass recycling is we do take the glass into our facility, we crush it, we use a series of screens, and at times we dry it. We do use optical sorters for color sortation if it's going back into container glass. If it's going to fiberglass, it's a little bit of a different process, and we've got a little bit more flexibility because fiberglass is typically colorblind, they're less color sensitive. We use a series of magnets and eddy currents to remove the ferrous and non-ferrous materials. We recycle what we can from that stream. We use blowers and vacuum sortation to remove paper. And for us, specific in the Southeast, we recycle more than just your food and beverage or what some people call your bottle or container glass, which is soda lime. But we also recycle plate glass. So we do windshields, auto glass, windows, etc. So it's a different process, but we do accept both at our facilities and do have outlets for both of those kinds of glass. So one might be more post-consumer and one might be more post-industrial or a commercial grade glass. I want to talk a little bit about the myths that we hear every day. The education of recycling as a whole is really important, specific for glass recycling. So it'll be interesting to see if any of these resonate with you. Broken glass cannot be accepted. As I just mentioned, we break the glass, we crush it. So we accept broken glass. The only time that glass wouldn't be accepted if it's broken is if it's the size of sand. And that's primarily because it's really hard for us to sort and it falls through our screens. But broken glass is accepted. If you're putting it in your recycling bin or a drop-off program, just obviously use caution and be mindful of the people that would be sorting that material. Mixed color glass cannot be accepted. Again, in my previous slide, hopefully that was addressed, but we accept mixed color glass. There's times where the glass might be color sorted because it can travel further, because it might have a higher value. But generally, we have optical sorters to sort the glass, so we don't need it to be color sorted when we receive it into our facility. Glass must be washed and cleaned. This is not an issue for us. We do think it's a nice, courteous thing to do, giving it a quick rinse, especially if it's full of food or other liquids. It can cause some odor issues, and just, again, putting yourself in the shoes of somebody who is recycling these packaged goods, it's nice to have the food or organics removed. Labels are not an issue. Typically, there's very, very limited glass residual loss from a label, unless the adhesives are really, really difficult, but it's not an issue for us to sort them properly. Glass contaminates other recyclables. We have a position that's single stream. Every material is pretty much contaminated in that process. We believe that if given that we're in a single stream collection system, if you've got the proper layout, sequencing, maybe potential investments to clean up that glass pile, then you can properly maximize your value for glass. So for us, it's one of those things where you should see a glass pile that we get. It doesn't always look like glass. So glass cannot be recycled due to China's sword policy. This just isn't true. Glass is recycled domestically. As many of you know, it's a very heavy material. It can't travel as far as other materials. There's no need for us to send it overseas. We've got plenty of demand in the US, and it just wouldn't be economically viable either. Glass has no value and belongs in the landfill, or the value of glass has gone down. So again, we kind of talk about if it's curbside collection, it's going for a MRF, is maximizing the process and the equipment. The glass itself is valuable. It's all the trash that ends up in the glass pile that we receive that hurts the value. It's not economically viable or beneficial for us to take a scenic route for the trash that comes in our pile. So glass is one of the most stable commodities in this stream when it's glass itself. The challenge is making sure that it's a clean glass pile. There are no end markets for glass. As you can see, end markets include container, fiberglass. We also do highway bead, which is cut off by my video, and more. Demand actually exceeds supply, which I've already mentioned. But there are plenty of markets for glass. In fact, Southeast specifically, we also sell some recycled glass into carpet packing. As we know, there's a lot of carpet manufacturers in the Southeast. So I wanted to talk a little bit about drop-off programs, or what we like to refer to as creative collections, and some of the considerations that go into that. First and foremost, we are strong advocates for curbside collection. The reason for that is we need really high volumes to operate efficiently at our facilities and to meet that demand. And curbside provides convenience. So if glass is removed from a curbside program, a convenience factor is also removed. And sometimes it can have adverse impacts when you're removing glass from a program. And that's primarily due to the fact that because that convenience factor is removed, residents will then put it into their trash bin instead of their recycling bin, and they'll put it in their trash bin instead of sending it to a drop-off or going to do a drop-off program at a recycling center or other locations. So one thing we talk about is quality versus quantity. In a drop-off program, we see a drop-off of volume. So it's lower volume, but typically higher quality glass. So that is something to consider. We need high volumes to operate. So sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. Typically, we like to say that a secondary processor like SMI should be located 300 or 350 miles or less from the city. That's not a hard line necessarily, but that is usually where the economics really make sense and really work, because the glass is being very clean, it's a higher value, it can travel further. MRF hauler support. It's really important, I think, to make sure that the MRF and the haulers are bought in on this program, if that is something that the city or county is choosing to do. And in conjunction with that is the landfill rates. So if landfill is really cheap, it does make the economics more difficult. But if landfill is expensive, that's all the more reason that maybe you want to consider some of those communication programs to properly divert glass from a recycling bin to a drop off rather than a recycling bin to a waste bin or a trash bin. Population density is obviously something that's really important. If it's a lot of people living in a metropolitan area, then you're going to have higher success, higher volumes, higher diversion rates, hopefully. City involvement and support, community, residential education go hand in hand as well. It's really changing a behavior. It's changing a mindset, and it's reminding constantly of the residents where they can recycle the material and where the glass can go. And typically we see that in partnership with the city or the county is critical. It's not something that we can necessarily do as our role, but it is something that the city and the county can do and make a huge impact. The other thing is your bin design and placement. It needs to be in a well-lit location, easy to find, somewhere that is safe, that there's certain hours of access, et cetera. And then potentially an aggregation site. So when the bins are picked up, instead of it coming directly to the processor like us, potentially you could aggregate the material to higher volumes, to full truckload material, full truckload volumes to make it more economical for the city. So it becomes more of a hub and spoke model. And then end market demand, which in the Southeast is not an issue. So that is a consideration that is important in other regions, but not specific to the Southeast. So with that, I hope you learned a couple things. I'm really interested to see some of the questions or address any myths that you might have or any of the challenges that you have with glass or glass recycling in the region. We are always a resource, and we are happy to talk through your individual scenarios. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution all the time to make glass recycling work. And we've got a great network with the Glass Recycling Coalition, the Glass Recycling Foundation, the Glass Packaging Institute. So would love to have a conversation if you're having challenges with glass. And thank you very much for your time.
So for anybody, we have a third speaker. I believe we're here with him now. We can get him on the line. No, we're done. Okay, so we're going to go right into discussion. We've got a few minutes left. I hope you give 5 or 10 minutes to the people who put these presentations together, and we'll try and answer some questions about glass recycling. Is Laura on the phone still? Do we have her available? And how about Scott? Is he on the phone as well? Okay, so we have Scott DeFife and Laura Hennemann, and we'll try and get some questions into them. Do we have any questions in the that are virtual? Anybody ask a question online that you can see? If not, how about out in the audience?
All right, hang on.
Okay, Dave?
Hi, Laura. This is Dave Robow. Are you on? I had a question for you, Laura. Are you on the phone?
You can readdress it to Scott if they can't get her.
Oh, I think I heard her. Laura, this is Dave Robow. I had a question for you regarding how much throughput you get through that facility in Sarasota, and how much capacity do you have for additional volume?
Hi, Scott. Can you hear me? Sorry about that. Go ahead. Try it now.
I can hear you. This is Laura.
This is Scott. I can hear you as well.
Hey, Laura, this is Dave Robow. I had a question for you. Your facility in Sarasota, Florida, I was just trying to get a sense for how much material goes through there and how much capacity do you have for additional material at that facility?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Dave. I don't have the specific numbers for how much goes through that specific facility. I will say some of our larger facilities are usually averaging about 10,000 tons a month. I do know the Sarasota facility has more capacity. So that's the best I could share, but I'm happy to follow up offline if makes sense.
Other questions from the audience?
Thanks. Hi, Laura. This is Chris Lund with GBB. Question, just to follow up on the types of glass that you receive. I heard a few. I just wanted to make sure I had the whole list: plate glass, auto shields. What else besides glass bottles?
Yeah, so it'd be kind of your post-industrial glass, or what, that's how we usually call it, which would be our plate glass. So anything like tempered, so it could be windows, it could be storefront windows or residential windows. It could be auto glass, whether it's your windshield specifically or, other windows within a vehicle. And I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, sometimes it's outdoor furniture, not mirror in the Southeast. We do accept mirror in other locations across the US, but I think that covers it. If you have something specific that you're looking for a home to recycle, then I'm happy to also talk through that.
So I have a question for both of you. I know you touched on it, Laura. There's a sense that there's not enough markets for glass, and really that's really not the case. And there's been some movement there in Florida, and maybe one of you can talk about the latest addition to the glass markets that just opened up in Valdosta, and a strengthening of the container glass market there.
Yep. Scott, do you want to handle that one? Otherwise, I'm happy to.
Sure. Yeah, in Valdosta, Georgia is a new glass manufacturing plant. Our glass, Yamamura, has opened up the first greenfield plant in the U.S. in some years. In Valdosta, they started their furnace in December, fired it up in December, and are in production. I am unsure of the actual, volumes, but and I believe most of it is flint. But there is a new plant in the area. In addition, going, Michael, back to our presentation in general, all of the container manufacturing industry is interested in increasing the amount of recycled content in the bottles that they make, right? So even the existing facilities, anchor facilities in Jacksonville and in Warner Robins, are both interested in increasing the use of cullet, and then throughout the region, other plants in North Carolina as well are increasing, and I guess the SERC region includes Louisiana. There's a RDOF facility in Louisiana as well. So overall, the entire industry is looking to increase production. So all of the Southeast region production facilities would seek more material.
Good. Another question out there? I have one more. I just wondered, for both your organizations, what your view might be on recycled content legislation. We had a lot of talk about that this morning, And just to pull some things together, what does it mean for the glass industry and SMI in particular? And if you could both answer that, that'd be great.
Sure. Scott, I'll go first if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're obviously supportive of minimum content legislation, especially if it's done right and smartly. I mean, I don't think it's any surprise that creates demand for our business, gives some reassurance in our operations. You know, we support it. It's a little bit uncomfortable at times because we don't necessarily want to tell our customers that they need to be told how to run their business. So it's kind of an awkward position at times, but in the Southeast specifically, could legislation be introduced? Sure. Is it needed? Probably not. You know, again, we'd support it, but it would be sort of bottom of our list only because there is so much demand. We can't even meet demand today. So the appetite is there, and I think that the manufacturers want to use more without the government oversight. But that being said, it's not something that we would oppose either. So, Scott?
Yeah, no, thanks. I think from overall from the industry standpoint, and just everybody in the audience knows, Strategic Materials is a good member of GPI as well as the manufacturing, because we represent the entire industry supply chain. From the manufacturing side, as Laura was saying, the demand is there. Usually a recycled content mandate is a demand side strategy, trying to drive up demand. The demand is there, and there are sources of clean cullet that exist. The supply chain is going to find the clean material. And so from the standpoint of recycled content requirements fixing a MRF glass problem, we don't see the connection. We see other issues as being the barriers and other policies that need to be addressed before recycled content legislation. As I said, the industry has a goal of getting to 50% by the end of the decade already. There's already an internal driver that helps from a production standpoint, the more cullet that is used. So we'd rather focus on cleaning up the streams and getting better quality material to the processing facility, more and better to the processing facility, and less glass going to landfill.
Thank you both on that. And switching to local now, just to keep it moving a little bit more. Is there anything that municipalities can do contractually in letting out a new contract? Are there specifications, something they can do to ensure that more glass makes it back into the market, maybe to lesser uses, and reduces that you can see? Both of you.
Laura, you want me to go first, or do you have?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Scott.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for the question. I think municipalities, communities should look very long and hard at the contracts, especially exclusivity clauses on marketing the material, because what we are finding in many places is when the municipality turns over exclusivity of all the material that's collected through the curbside stream, it loses control of the ability to pick which materials are being recycled. We have instances where there are some service providers that are suggesting that certain materials be dropped from the recycling stream, yet do not want to allow alternative providers to come in and pick up that material if they don't want it. So I'd look very long and hard at those provisions. I would make sure that your audit provisions are strong, and as well as that, those are my two primary benefits or primary suggestions on the contract.
And I'll just add, there are a lot of municipalities that are putting in provisions for the specification of glass to be made in a MRF. I think you might recall that Michael Hoffman this morning was talking about the service providers. They'll do anything you want if you pay them. I mean, there's nothing. So if a municipality wants to ensure that their glass goes to a market rather than to a lesser use, or they can't see what that use is, it can be specified in a contract in the final package that they make what it should be, and as provided they're willing to pay for it, generally the service provider will pay for it. So I think.
That's a good point. I mentioned in my presentation the GRC certification standards, and we would certainly recommend that communities look at those as a goal. Because if you're meeting those certification standards, there should be a market for the product.
Yeah, and I just want to go around the room one more time. You have a chance to talk to two of the most important glass executives in the glass recycling chain. Anybody else have? Kina.
Hi. I want to start off by saying I'm not an anti-glass person, so please don't take it that way, because I'm not ready to drink wine out of a box or an aluminum can. So please keep making that glass for my wine. But as I go through the grocery store today and I look at my shelves, I'm not buying mayonnaise in a glass jar anymore. I'm not buying my mustard in a glass jar, et cetera, et cetera. You talk about the increasing amount of materials that you need. I'm just trying to connect the dots. So this is more of a, one of those thought-provoking questions, I guess, maybe.
Sure. I understand that. I still like to hit the bottom of a ketchup jar myself to knock the ketchup out of the jar rather than squeeze it. But, a lot of the brands have decided that certain products, are better in a squeezable form or something like that, which you can't do with the glass. So I get that. The brands are all driving for higher sustainability on all their packaging material. So there are goals coming down from the ultimate brand customer, the food and beverage customers themselves, for higher recycled content, as well as there are expanding markets in some food categories. Maybe not the condiments category, but in other food categories, there are increasing uses of glass, and in the non-alcoholic beverage categories as well. We have increased demand from an overall market size. The only part of the glass production end markets that has been decreasing, over the course of the past decade has been beer. Largely, there's been two shifts that we see in our market data. One being the younger generations switching away from beer to seltzers and other, alcoholic beverage drinks. And also there has been movement in the craft beer sector as they expand their sales capacity and region, move away from being a regional product to more of a national product, to move to can, so that they can ship, more broadly across the country. But there are market segments where glass is on the increase, and there's also a demand for more recycled content in the packaging overall.
The only thing I would add to that, because Scott, I think you covered it perfectly, is glass primarily goes back into glass container, but that's not the only market. So food and beverage glass is also used in fiberglass insulation, and some of our plate glasses can also be used in fiberglass insulation in other markets. Any market that's potentially using sand would replace with recycled glass. So even if you go into your grocery store and hopefully you wish more things were in glass, there are other markets that have a strong demand that are growing. You think about a housing market, et cetera. So the fiberglass insulation market's very, very strong.
But we do applaud your support for wine bottles.
Keep drinking your wine.
I promise I will.
Yeah, I would. As we come over to this other thing, I'd like to comment on one thing. There is some data that suggests that there's a movement back to primary materials, because materials that aren't primary may have less safety. Not all the data is, but there's some concern by consumers that the utilization of plastics for things they can't control, from global warming to PFAS release to some studies on PLAs and other things, baddies, that they may have some impact, and have actually gone away from plastic and back into other materials. I'm for a lot of competition between materials because it makes the world go round. But truly, there does seem to be some primacy for moving back into something that's inert as glass that we're seeing in the data. Go ahead.
Yeah, Bob Huffer from General Kinematics Corporation. We've done some testing with several different customers utilizing recycled glass content product, and I know what hasn't really been mentioned in either of the presentations, but one has been concrete additives, if grinding it fine enough to be utilized in the use of concrete. And in some tests, in some scenarios, they've found it to be very beneficial in terms of its increase in strength. I was just curious if either of you had any input on that utilization of recycled glass.
Scott, do you want to go first, or you want?
Yeah, I mean, I have a little bit that I can offer up in this space. We certainly support any potential end markets for the glass. I think that in any normal processing, recovery and processing of the glass, right? You're going to get fines and non-cullet quality material that has potential uses, and it's good to make beneficial use of that material. I do think sometimes folks believe that there's oh, well, I can't get my glass clean enough for container glass or for fiberglass, so I'll focus on aggregates or something like that. It doesn't have to be one versus the other. I think if we have a properly functioning system, we're gathering more glass, period. First off, diverting it from landfill, and then it will all find a home. But quality and cleanliness, are key attributes for all of it. In talking with some of the aggregate companies, they can take fines. It still has to be clean. There's reasons why we can't use fines in the container glass, furnace. But I think all extra end markets is helpful.
Yeah, and from our perspective, we're supportive of it. We participate in university studies around it. We kind of feel it's a bit in the R&D phase. I believe it can replace up to 20% of Portland cement, which is encouraging. The things that we've found challenging with that market so far is volumes, for one. A lot of our glass is going back into glass container and fiberglass insulation primarily, so it's sort of already spoken for in some sense, depending on the region. But also, the specifications are typically pretty stringent, and we have found in some of the applications they're also color sensitive, and so for us, we can't control how many amber bottles are coming in versus your Flint bottles. So it's been a great idea, but practically hasn't really come to light yet. So we're supportive. We want to learn more. It just has not. It hasn't advanced in the way that maybe the other markets have. And as Scott briefly touched on, we do try to operate with a hierarchy of glass. So we try to do highest and best use to make sure that the glass lives on. And so those end-of-life applications for glass become less desirable, both economically and environmentally. So it's a really great question, and we didn't touch on it just because we really don't sell much into that market today. I still think it's being researched at this point.
Just as a resource, there's a really great work that's been done in Florida, a couple of landmark papers, one from Tim Townsend up at the University of Florida, in cooperation with FDOT. And like Laura said, it's in that phase where it's just getting started. And I guess there's one plant in the United States that just opened up in the Northeast. But it's something you can look into. It makes all the same points our speakers did. Anybody else?
Yeah, Michael, this is Gene Jones, Laura, and Scott. I just wanted to add to that point because we actually did a research project with the Department of Environmental Protection. This is 8 years ago. I guess we got an innovative grant. And we looked at, processed glass aggregate going into concrete and did the whole testing. And Laura, I'll send you that report because we actually got the glass cutlet from you all. Part of that process was to look at the strength. So we did ASTM testing on it and actually built a couple of libraries So if anybody wants those reports, I'd be happy to send them to you. We did have the universities involved in it too.
Yeah, and I wasn't talking primarily about aggregate glass, but that's true too. And thank you very much, Gene. I was talking about the pozzolan studies that were recently done. And that's the experimental part of this. The aggregate studies were really good work. So any other questions? Well, I want to thank our presenters today and all of you for hanging around during the little tiny period of glitch. I know sometimes when we're doing these remote conferences, we run into all kinds of challenges. I think it's good to know about these things. I'll close with one other comment, and that is this. As processing fees have gone up, some of the opposition to in some locations, not all of them, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, but at least in some of them, has changed in terms of wanting to recycle glass or not. And again, I'll point back to what Michael Hoffman said, and he mentioned glass. I would just say that right now, that whole phase of the business is changing because they're getting paid for processing, and I think that's something to remember. It's changing. It just takes a while to get that done, and there's still bad actors, local actors who may not know that they should be going out there and pushing for that kind of processing so we can get more glass back into the system. So I think there's a lot of push and tug there, but that's something to remember. It all goes back to the premise that you know, the supply chain has to be strong enough so that all sides benefit from the process that we're engaged in. So anyway, any final things, Scott or Laura? If not, I'm going to say that's a wrap.
I'm good from my side and open to any conversation in the future. Feel free to send me an email or find me on LinkedIn or give me a call, whatever it might be. Appreciate everybody willing to learn a little bit more about glass.
Yep, I agree completely. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us. Sorry we couldn't be there in person. We'll do that the next time, but also am open to any conversations. Email, I think was on my presentation. You know, any communities that want to engage with us on recycling some glass or helping us, having the industry help solve some problems, please reach out. That's what we hope for first. Give us a chance to help solve some issues before some decisions are made to remove the material from the stream.
Thank you both. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.